Hello everyone and welcome back to another Star Wars The Black Series action figure review. Today we're taking a look at Dash Rendar from Star Wars Shadows of the Empire, a multimedia project launched in 1996 which spawned a video game, action figures, comic books and more. It also played a crucial part in bridging the gap between The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, and Dash Rendar played a key role in that story. Now, if you've tuned in to my channel or followed me on social media for any length of time, you know that I'm a huge 90s nostalgia buff. I will gladly lap up anything from the expanded universe, and to see Dash Rendar make his debut in the Black Series is a dream come true. If you'd have told me at any point over the last 30 years that we'd see a new Dash Rendar figure in any scale, let alone the 6-inch line, I'd have said that you were nuts. So to be able to review this figure is incredibly surreal, and Hasbro really nailed this one. Are there things that I would have done differently? Absolutely, but those little nitpicks aren't to this figure's detriment, they're just personal preference. Overall, I couldn't be happier with this release. It's a phenomenal figure and definitely worth adding to your collection. So if you'd like to purchase Dash Rendar for yourself, head on down to the video description where there's a link that will take you to Star Action Figures, and at the time of recording, Dash is in stock and available to buy. Now, as always, we'll dive into what makes this an absolute must-have shortly, but before we do, let's take a quick look at that all-important packaging. So as you can see, we do have pretty standard Black Series packaging for Dash Rendar, but what really makes this one stand out is that you've got that really nice striking purple colour scheme going on for the Shadows of the Empire subline. As you can see on the front of the box, this is number 2 in the Shadows of the Empire line of Black Series figures, the first of course being Prince Xizor, but that colour scheme looks really nice. It really pops on shelf, so if you're an inbox collector, this one's really going to stand out in your display. Down the spine of the box, you've got this really cool image of Dash Rendar looking very cool indeed, very handsome, very Chad-like, and you've even got the Outrider in the background, which is really cool. On the back of the box, you've got a brief description of the character, that image once again, and as you can see, the colour band does continue around the back of the box. So again, pretty standard stuff, nothing really to write home about in terms of overall aesthetic, but like I said, that purple colour scheme does look really nice. But the figure inside looks even nicer. So let's jump in and take a look at Dash Rendar himself. Now before we dive into the Black Series version of Dash Rendar, there are a couple of things that I want to address, as I alluded to at the start of the review, with regards to creative decisions that I maybe would have approached a little bit differently with the Black Series version. This is of course the 3 3/4 inch Power of the Force 2 version of Dash Rendar that was released back in 1996, and there are a couple of aesthetic choices that I would have carried over from this figure into his Black Series counterpart. The first of which is the likeness. Now, I realise that there's no one image of Dash Rendar that looks the same. There are multiple artist interpretations of this character out there, from video game graphics to comic book illustrations and trading cards, all that sort of stuff, and like I said, no one image of Dash looks the same. But what I would have liked to have seen carried over into the Black Series figure is a little bit of stubble or some kind of beard. I think the rugged look for Dash looks a lot better. It's my personal preference when it comes to how Dash is portrayed. It's not a detriment to the Black Series figure by any means, but it is something that I maybe would have done a little bit different with the Black Series figure itself. Like I said, it's not a legitimate complaint, it's just something that I would have liked to have seen. The second is the inclusion of more accessories. The Black Series version is very light on weapons, and I would have loved to have seen a tribute paid in the Black Series to this original Power of the Force figure. As you can see, he comes with this very exaggerated and, by modern standards, absurd accessory in the form of a backpack, which also carries with it a very large blaster cannon. It looks insane, but it would have been such a nice touch to have been incorporated into the Black Series figure. I really liked what the Vintage Collection did with their recent Hammerhead figure, where they included a blaster rifle that was very similar to the one included with his Power of the Force 2 figure, and I think something like this would have been really nice to have seen with Dash. Like I said, it's not something that makes the Black Series figure any worse, it's just something that I would have liked to have seen. So there's a quick look at the Power of the Force version of Dash Rendar. Now let's dive into this review and take a look at the incredible Black Series version. So here we have Dash Rendar from the Black Series in all his glory, and I do have to say, in my opinion, this figure is an absolute masterpiece. I'm thrilled with how this one turned out. I honestly don't think Hasbro could have done a better job with this one if they tried, and everything about it, from paint applications to sculpted details, are all on point. And to hold this figure in my hand in 2025 and for it to be as good as it is an absolute treat. I'm really impressed with it and really happy to have it as part of my collection. Now, as I alluded to at the start of the review, when I gave you a look at the Power of the Force 2 version of Dash Rendar, there are a couple of things that I maybe would have approached differently with regards to this figure, and they're, again, not legitimate complaints, they're just personal preference, so they don't make the figure worse by any stretch, but they are things that I thought were worth mentioning. So, as I said earlier, I would have given the head sculpt on this figure a little bit of stubble, bit of 5 o'clock shadow maybe, just to make him look a little bit more rough around the edges. He's got this very clean shaven look going on, which is absolutely fine. One thing that really impresses me about Hasbro is their ability to craft a likeness for a character that's never been portrayed in live action media. If I had to say this head sculpt looked like anyone from real life, I'd say it's a cross between Jaime Lannister from Game of Thrones and Dolph Ziggler from WWE. It's a very strong, shall we say, likeness. The jawline in particular is very impressive, and the hair is absolutely immaculate, and it is really good. Like I said, for Hasbro to be able to craft a likeness for a character that's never been portrayed by a physical actor is a really impressive feat, and what Hasbro have done here is really nice. Really happy with how that turned out. It's a very crisp, defined head sculpt, and the photoreal face printing technology goes a long way to add some realism to it. Now, the other thing that I would have changed about this figure, and again I touched on this earlier on in the video, are the accessories. He does just come, unfortunately, with the one, and that's the DL44 pistol. Very similar to the weapon used by Han Solo, which is quite fitting considering that Dash Rendar is the de facto Han Solo character in the Shadows of the Empire story. He's the resident scoundrel, and so to include a blaster like that is, as I said, fitting. But I would have loved it if they'd have touched on the Power of the Force 2 figure, paid a little bit of a tribute to that, and included either a more unique blaster pistol or at least the cannon and the backpack which was featured on that original figure. I realise that it is a gimmick and a very absurd accessory by modern standards, but it would have just been a really nice touch to have seen it with this figure. I'm not entirely sure whether he used something like that in the game or in the comic books. I don't know whether that was just made for the figure itself, but it would have been nice to have seen it enlarged into the 6-inch line. But again, those aren't changes that I think make this figure any worse. They're not a detriment to the Black Series version. They're just things that I thought were worth pointing out from a personal preference standpoint. Now, with regards to the rest of the figure, as I said, paint applications are absolutely fantastic on this one. Everything is really nice and crisp. The chest armor in particular looks really nice, and instead of being painted in this silver, almost bolt gun metal colour, it's cast in a silver plastic, which really goes a long way to add to the visual of this figure. It's got this sort of marbled look to it, which really looks nice, and there are dints and dings and really nice defined sculpted details on the armor itself. So I really love how that looks, and it's a nice contrast to the rest of the figure. As you can see, he's got these brown enlarged shoulder pads going on, which are very telling of the 90s era. He definitely has that sort of 1990s action hero look. He's got this really nice quilted texture going on the bodysuit underneath, as you can see. Different shades of brown and blues going on there. Really nice sculpted detail on the belt as well, which has this nice fake leather look to it. And then you've got, again, really nice crisp details on the belt buckles, on the pouches. You've also got the holster there that the blaster can be stored in. Really nice stuff from a visual standpoint. Like I said, I couldn't be happier with how this figure turned out. It looks really good. Now, articulation wise, he is packed to the brim with articulation of a modern Black Series standard. There are a couple of articulation points that have been removed, but again, these don't make the figure any worse, and in fact, in my opinion, enhanced visual and the aesthetic of this figure. So we do have a ball joint at the head and neck, so there's a really nice range of movement going on there. We have butterfly joints in the shoulders. On my copy, I will point out, these shoulder joints are very tight, and it takes a little bit of effort to get those shoulders posed up, but once you do, you can pose him in a lot of different ways, which is great. And you've also got these shoulder plates, which are on a ring system, very similar to the clone and stormtrooper figures that we've seen recently, so they don't hinder articulation either, and they're also made of a nice malleable plastic. We have hinges at the elbows and a swivel at the top of the glove. We also have ball jointed wrists, which is really nice to see. That creates a much more natural look, really nice free flowing articulation, and just looks a lot more natural than the hinges that we've seen on figures in the past. We also have a ball joint at the torso, just under the armour there. We have ball joints at the hips, hinges at the knees with the pins not visible, which is great to see. And we also have a swivel cut at the top of the boot and a hinge and rocker at the ankle. So really good articulation on this figure. As I mentioned, a couple of articulation points have been removed, so you don't have the swivel at the top of the thigh, and there's no swivel in the bicep, which again, in my opinion, enhance the aesthetic of this figure, because those articulation cuts don't take away from the realism. So all in all, I'm absolutely blown away with this figure. He looks absolutely superb. I think he's going to pair really nicely with Prince Xizor and some of the other figures that we've seen in the Black Series from Shadows of the Empire. And I really hope that this means we're going to see a lot more expanded universe figures in the Black Series going forward. Like I said, I never thought we'd see a Black Series version of Dash Rendar. I never thought we'd see another figure of Dash Rendar, if I'm being honest. So to have this again in my hands, in my collection in 2025, I'm overjoyed, and I can't recommend this figure enough. So there we have it, guys. That concludes this review on Dash Rendar from Shadows of the Empire. Once again, an incredible addition to the Black Series, and this really opens up the floodgates in terms of character selection in the line going forward. Characters like Dash Rendar, Prince Xizor, and the ones I gave you a look at in my Last Command 4-pack review show that the possibilities are endless with the Black Series, and hopefully we'll continue to see weird and wonderful characters added to it in the future. Let me know in the comments what you think of this figure and which Legends characters you'd like to see brought to life as action figures, and I'll see you for another Black Series action figure review very soon. Until then, as always, thank you for watching, keep collecting, and may the Force be with you.